That is.
Because you're not going to have valet, because that obviously won't fly in LaPorte either.
No.
So where are people parking?
Valley parking in LaPorte. That's as bad as Valley parking in New Jersey. Here are my keys.
Boy,
Okay,
what
thank
a poor fit that is.
you. John.
Would those restaurants fit into a regional concept for South Bend? Would they fit in regional distance for South Bend?
Interesting. I would say yes. That would be the only way that they really should have marketed to South Bend, but South Bend also had its own restaurants, so they'd be competing directly with the restaurants in South Bend. That's a good question. I don't know how much marketing she actually did in the South Bend area. I suspect not very much.
Isn't it like marketing a restaurant, things like that, South Bend, you're talking like different time zones, things like that, especially bringing clients, I think that would make it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, it
You're
does.
traveling
Time
30
zone
minutes,
things.
plus you're losing an hour coming here, you know, one way or the other, you gotta factor that in. See, that makes it hard to, especially to a businessman who's on he flies in here, I'm gonna take him out to eat, then we're gonna talk business, then he flies back out.
Right.
That would make that just a little bit harder.
Maybe
to
regions
them in
are
a
just
region.
totally dedicated towards business. Time zones probably make different regions.
Yeah, and it's time zone absolutely, because as David pointed out, you know, you fly in a particular time, you only have a little turnaround, then you're gonna take them out of a time zone to go to dinner. Come on, you know. And then what happened a few years ago when we actually changed our times, and South Bend didn't change their time, and so remember how problematic that was to try to coordinate appointments and all that stuff. So at least now we know we're always going to be 1 hour behind South Bend regardless. So it's a little bit better, but still, it's difficult to market in the South Bend area from here because South Bend area does have so much, especially moving eastward towards Mishawaka and the Elkhart, because they have a lot, especially in terms of restaurants and entertainment. As a UP Mall development is just phenomenal right now. There's so many restaurants there. I mean, how do you compete in this area? I don't know how. Unless we have a particular niche, and niche marketing would be the key. And I don't want to get into restaurants because one of ours failed. So don't get me talking about restaurants. But and the points you guys are all making are very well taken. We're talking about what is it that really drives our competitive advantages, if we have any. Is it our culture or lack thereof? Is it our labor base, the quality of our labor force? Is it the luck of geographic location? Is it our availability of natural resources? One of the things that we should point out, that I like to point out, is that competitiveness, our region competing with, let's say, the South Bend area, doesn't necessarily have to result in a zero-sum game. Notwithstanding the restaurant argument we just made, or debate we just made, doesn't mean that if we bring an industry here, it's going to harm another region. In fact, regions, when you think about what a region really is, we talk about this region being Northwest Indiana. How many counties are in Northwest Indiana? 7. Okay? Really?
That's according to the state.
Yeah.
It's according to the state. Okay, that's the point I wanted to make here. Okay? Someone says this is Northwest Indiana. We have the 3 counties across the top, the other 3, and then 1 over here. Right? That's what, well, if I did it this way, right? 1 over here. Right? That's Northwest Indiana. Kind of like a swoop, right? That's Northwest Indiana. Do we think that way? No. When you think Northwest Indiana, what is it that you really think of?
Lake County.
Lake County. That's the attitude, right? Lake County. Okay? And when you think Lake County, what do you think of? What's that? Corruption. Okay. Well, where is that? Does that corruption take place in Hammond? Where? Oh, okay. All right. Here, the point is that those outside of our region have one perception as to what the region is. Those living within the region have another perception of what the region is. Outside the region, they say in Northwest Indiana, boy, that's not a whole big swath of 7 or 8 counties that make up the northwestern part of Indiana, right? We in our region that live here, we're saying, well, probably the 3 counties, probably the top 3, maybe 4 counties, right? We're talking about Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties, kind of like Northwest. Is Stark there? Yeah. Is what's just to the east of Stark, or west of Stark? Was it Jasper County, right? That's kind of included also, but that's where farming is, right? We kind of, I'm just talking about attitudes I hear all the time. Oh, those are farms. That's not Northwest Indiana. Northwest Indiana, I think of the smokestacks out of Gary. I think of the corruption in Lake County. I think of, every time we drive to Chicago, I'm thinking of the smell from the steel plants, right? You're talking about bringing people in. Bringing people in. The best way to do this is to bring people into South Bend and drive from South Bend to here. Don't bring them into Chicago. Bring them to Chicago. They're driving through Gary to come here, right? That happens. It shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is. Okay. So what is our region? Our region is, in fact, what we think it is, and that's all it is. What we in our area think it is, and we have to market that to other people. Our region is not Lake County. Lake County is part of it, but it's not Lake County. And if we develop something here, if we bring industries in here, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to take away from another region, because they're going to have competitive advantages for industries that we don't wish to have here. So it's not, I say, it's not a zero-sum game. We can benefit here, we can grow here, and so could regions just south of us, so could regions just east of us, so could regions north and west of us. We could all grow if we really are able to identify the competitive advantages of the various regions, and you don't necessarily have to harm the other in order to thrive yourself. All right, so I think I might have answered some of these questions already. So what does it mean? What does competitiveness mean? What does this whole idea of competitive advantage mean? So who wants to kind of sum that up a little bit? The concept of competitive advantage, or competitiveness for that matter. What do you think it means for you? You're going to try to explain it to somebody.
It's gonna set me apart from the others.
Okay, so you're going to stand out from the others, set you apart. What else? Because setting you apart could be both positive or negative,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We can set you apart. Yeah, it's the smokestacks in Gary. Yeah, okay. That set us apart.
Yeah.
We're focusing on the positive sometimes, right? Okay. What else? How else would you describe competitiveness or a competitive advantage besides just setting ourselves apart? Which is important. We have to set ourselves apart.
Willingness
Okay.
to change.
Willingness to change in what direction?
Yeah, it could
You
be-
knew that was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to take risks in an area rather than just staying with the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Be the willingness to innovate, maybe, think a little bit differently. I refuse to say think outside the box. Well, I already said it. Sorry. That's an overly used term. It's think a little bit differently. Because if we think the same way over and over again, we're only going to get the same results, right?
Yeah.
So if we want different results, we obviously have to think differently. Every region has to think differently in order to compete with other regions who happen to be thinking differently, or the people within those regions thinking differently. Okay, so competitiveness means standing out, being willing to think a little differently than you had in the past. Anything else? What else? Think about the region you live in. You want to say it's 3 counties? You want to say it's just around your house? I don't care. Think of the region that you live in. What are the advantages, do you think, that you see in your region compared to others? What are some of the pluses?
We haven't got a tax bill in 4 years?
Okay. We just defer our taxes until our children are old enough to pay them. Okay. But actually, technically, our tax base is relatively low.
Right.
Okay.
If I lived
But that's a problem, the tax problem.
If I lived in Porter